First and foremost in line is Miss Hilda Hoover. Miss Hilda is the Global Head of Advisory for KPMG's Energy and Natural Resource Practice, and she carries a rich experience of 22 years in consulting and auditing in that area. She has led the redesign of business intelligence functions, developed business model designs, and implemented a lot of cost optimization techniques at several oil, gas, and mineral companies. By now, I'm sure you would have got a feeling that she might be an engineer, right? But I'm quite delighted to tell that she is a chartered accountant just like us. May we have a round of applause for her? It's just another good example that chartered accountants are not restricted to accounts and audit. The kind of authority she is on this subject, I don't think we could have got a better speaker than her to speak on this subject. So ladies and gentlemen, fasten your seatbelts, energize your mind for an energetic speech on energy.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I must say, I don't know if I'm glad or not, because I got what we call in the West the graveyard session. So I'm definitely going to try my best to energize you, because I'm talking about a topic on energy. Well, I see this conference is around hope and challenges. Well, I think my topic today will definitely have a lot of hope in, but at the same time, I think I will also highlight some challenges for us in the industry. I will spend the next few minutes really taking you on a journey, what has happened in the oil and gas industry in the last 18 months or so. In between, I will weave in also outlooks. The message that I want to give to you today is not just insights of KPMG, but there's a lot of publications globally around this. So what you will see is, I'm not going to reference every time to some of the statistics that I will put out, but it's safe to say most of it is publicly available. Let me start off by saying, as we breathe in air, being the fuel to human life, so is energy the fuel to economic prosperity. In between, I will weave in also outlooks. The message that I want to give to you today is not just insights of KPMG, but there's a lot of publications globally around this. So what you will see is, I'm not going to reference every time to some of the statistics that I will put out, but it's safe to say most of it is publicly available. Let me start off by saying, as we breathe in air, being the fuel to human life, so is energy the fuel to economic prosperity. We cannot live or go without that. So it is right to say we should start off with energy efficiency. Energy efficiency is bound to be the biggest supplier of fuel by 2035. Why do we say this? Energy efficiency is the only source that meets 3 criteria. The first one, environment. The second one, economics. And the third one is financial. It is important to note that for us to be successful in the future, we will have to continue breaking down barriers to achieve energy efficiency by 2035. Why do we say this? As at the end of 31st of December 2012, we have seen energy subsidies of more than $500 billion worldwide. That is a huge amount of money. So for us to be successful, to manage our resources, it means we need to start being transparent on the cost of fossil fuels, that we can start moving these subsidies into things like renewables or energy efficiency programs. If we look at 2012, we've seen a reduction in energy consumption. Why? That was mainly due to the economic downturn, but also due to higher energy prices. We, as society, responded to that by becoming more energy efficient. What do we see for the future? We anticipate that we will use a third more energy by 2035. Now, where's this energy going to come from? Firstly, the important thing to note is fossil fuels is still the primary supplier of energy, and that will be until 2035. Then we have to look at, well, what is in the ground? So let's look at oil. Currently, as we stand, we've got 1,700 billion barrels of oil available. That's proven resource. This oil will be used mainly by China, or Asia, I should say, and in the petrochemical arena. So that 1,700 billion barrels will equate by 2035, we will use, but a third of that will be used for transportation. Petrochemicals is the other big arena where we will see how this 101 million barrels a day will be spent. That demand is really driven by India, the Middle East, and Asia. I've mentioned to you what our reserve base is. These are proven reserves. That equates to more or less 54 years of life. If we take into account recoverable resources, so those are the things that we know of, that estimate more than quadruples. For this region, what is important is that 60% of that comes from the conventional space, not unconventionals. And that is a topic that I will also touch on. Let me move to the gas picture. Currently, for gas, we've got more or less 213 trillion cubic meters available. That's 61 years of life. The unconventional story has been brilliant. I think you're all familiar with shale gas. Again, I'll touch on that topic later. But just bringing in some of the shale gas reserves now, the 61 years change to 211 years. Why do I throw these statistics at you? Is to say the oil and gas industry or fossil fuels is not dead. Peak oil, you've all heard about that. Peak oil, if you look at the history, is not applicable. As we advance in technology, this proven and recoverable resource base will be added to. 3 technologies I want to highlight. The first one is horizontal drilling. The second one is hydraulic fracking, which is really being used in the US very successfully. And thirdly, enhanced oil recoveries. Enhanced oil recoveries has been used successfully in Moscow or in Russia, CIS, And also, we are seeing that application more in the Middle East. And that's really where we take mature oil fields and we try and get more from that. What do these technologies mean for us? It says three things. Firstly, it brings new reserves to the table. New reserves, yeah, I mean new places. The three places we want to highlight: Africa, Russia, and China. You're all familiar with the Arctic story. It also brings new type of reserves. Light tight oil. Again, that is our US counterpart. As I've already spoken about enhanced oil recovery techniques, where we get more out of the existing oil fields. And then the ultra-deep oil fields or platforms that we've seen. That is really in the South American arena. If I then look at unconventionals, that is a very interesting story. Unconventionals is enabling the US to, firstly, this year, China became the biggest net oil importer in the world. The US, it's predicted, by the year 2015, the US will be the biggest oil producer, overtaking Saudi and Russia. At the same time, what it does for the US, that they're predicting, more or less in 10 years, that they will be a zero net importer. So they are firmly on this journey of energy independence. This has always been the American dream. And through unconventionals, specifically shale gas, they are firmly on that journey. Let's touch a little bit on China. China will overtake the US as becoming the most user of oil by 2030. Currently, it's still the US. China will be the second biggest gas producer after the US due to unconventionals. China, in their 12th 50-year plan, they have published that they want to be a main player in shale gas. The ambition is to produce about between 60 and 100 billion cubic meters by 2020. How are they going to achieve this? Because they don't know, or they don't have the technology or the know-how. They've invited international exploration and production companies to be part of this bonanza. Do we think they will achieve that? There's a few challenges that they have to think of, and the biggest challenge for them would be infrastructure. Let's change the view and let's come to the Middle East. The Middle East will be a huge energy consumer. It changes from what we see today. Some interesting facts, which is quite alarming. Firstly, the Middle East will consume, or their demand for gas is the second highest in the world. It is greater in demand than the whole of OECD. I mean, you know, we know the region as exporters. We're certainly not saying that they're going to stop exporting. But what we are saying is all the new finds will be used for their own local agenda. This is widely publicized what the strategy is of the Middle East around infrastructure, power, and desalination. The Iran story, nobody knows currently how that would play out. So there is still a big question how Iran will really contribute to the agenda. Iraq will be the biggest growth supplier to the OPEC region. A lot of questions have been asked to me, what do we believe will happen to OPEC with the whole play of unconventionals? The first thing to note is that OPEC or the Middle East will always be relevant. They are still and will remain the lowest cost producer of conventionals. There is nobody else. There is no field out there that will beat that. What we have seen, or what we are predicting, is that there will be a decline of exports from OPEC or from the Middle East. But that would not be permanent. So currently, as we stand, non-OPEC suppliers has got the bulk. But we see that changing after the next decade, where OPEC again will be the primary source. I've spoken about the Middle East still being the cheapest. If I look at what is on the agenda of international oil companies, their projects are becoming far more complicated technically, and with that comes a cost. So if you have reviewed the results, and you all auditors, maybe some of you actually audit these companies, you will see that there's been a decline in revenue. But the reserves did not come in. So they're spending more money on capital projects, but we don't see it coming through on the bottom line because the reserves are not coming with these capital projects. Coming back to the whole unconventional agenda, what is it doing for the US? Well, I think it's $1 million question, and I'll try and break it down. Firstly, with bringing all this extra gas into play, the US has got 3 questions. The first one is, do we use those hydrocarbons in its raw form and we keep it all in the US? The second question is, do we keep it in or we export? The second question is, do we keep the hydrocarbons, refine that, and then again keep it in the US, or do we export refined product? The third one is, do we keep it in country and use it until the end consumer product, and then maybe export it? So there's 3 scenarios, and all 3 have got quite big implications. It has been said that for every dollar that the US will export out in the form of LNG, they can lose in the form of GDP in their country $15 to $20. So you can imagine there's a huge group of people saying, let's keep the hydrocarbons within our own country, or continent, I should rather say. What it is also allowed the US to do is it's creating a new industrial revolution for them. Now I want to stop there because this really influences trade. Because they've got cheap gas or gas, the biggest form of gas is being used in power generation. So they are producing goods cheaper. All of the gas that they are anticipating finding, the US can't use all of that. So they are saying, let's re-look at creating our industries. Those things we can put on a ship and ship out. Now, why is this important? Because currently, when they import goods from China, the ship comes and it's full. But guess what? The ship goes back empty. Now, they can use that ship with goods and put their own goods on it. So the opportunity for them is already just on the cost side, and then obviously also on the gas side. So this brings me to trade. We definitely see a shift from the Atlantic Basin to the Asian Pacific. Again, yeah, we have to look at China. China will rule oil and oil products trade by 63%. Chinese companies are becoming very sophisticated. Because of the huge energy requirement now and in the future, they have so far spent $100 billion in trying to secure energy either at the wellhead or on trading activities. The sophistication of Chinese companies, if we look a few years ago, they only bought oil fields, meaning they wanted to control at the wellhead. Now what we see is they're becoming big energy traders. So they're sitting aside with people like Trafigura. This is a very interesting phenomenon because I don't know if you've seen, the Chinese just bought a whole country's oil reserves, a whole country, Ecuador. They bought 90% of Ecuador's oil reserves. And it's not to produce the oil, it's that bought oil already out of the ground. So they've got the right to the production of Ecuador. That is quite different from what they used to do. I also would like to highlight war and politics in the energy agenda. In August, 3% have been knocked off the WTI price. And that was when the US ambassador in Libya was killed. $10 was knocked off the oil price, increased the oil price of the Syrian conflict. So politics plays a huge part in the pricing of oil. If I stop at pricing, if I had a crystal ball, I'm sure I will not be standing here and I would be relaxing somewhere on a beach. But this is the prediction for oil prices. In real terms, $128 by 2035 for oil. For US gas, 6.8. For European gas, 12.7. And Japanese, 14.9. You know, will this happen? As I said, I don't have a crystal ball. But I would not go out and make big puns. Why do I say that? Nobody anticipated the revolution of shale gas. Now, the interesting thing is, shale gas is actually not new. This unconventional has been with us for a very, very long time. We just did not know how to make it feasible, how to make it economic viable. Now we have. So who's the next big players that's going to come along? I said China before. But there's some great fundamentals for shale gas. The first thing, you need to understand the geology around shale gas. So even though shale gas is a manufacturing process, very different to the major projects or the big projects that international oil companies are doing. This is a repetitive task. So it's all about how does the geology look. You can't just say because in the US it worked, hopefully it's going to work in China or somewhere in Europe. The second thing that's really fundamental is the regime or the policies and frameworks by countries to allow the development. And thirdly, it's the market conditions. Shale gas is capital intensive. It's not cheap. But a lot of people ask me, but how in the world do the US, why are they so successful with shale gas and the Henry Hub price is only $3.50? Well, they get a lot of condensate at this stage. So with all the wet gas that they have, or the condensate, this helps them or subsidize a lot of the dry gas. You will see a different play once that runs out. I can tell you they can't make money at $3.50. We've looked at all the ways and all the sums. So in our view, and other colleagues that's probably far more clever than I am, they share the same view. I think my time is running out. Two last thoughts. I've spoken about Europe, China, Middle East. The challenge or the gloom factor is Europe. Europe, unfortunately, there is no good picture for us from an energy point of view. In 2012, they shifted from importing hydrocarbons to importing refined goods. Why? Their refineries are so old that the refineries can't compete with the refineries in the Middle East. Also, the type of oil that we're getting out of the ground is heavy. So your refinery configuration needs to look completely different to really process this. Thirdly, a lot of the stuff, gas to liquids, coal to liquids, biofuels, that all passes the refinery. So if you can't change your refinery configuration, you're going to close it. 15 refineries in Europe closed since 2017. Europe is still the biggest gas importer in the world. The interesting thing is they will only go back to the same patterns of 2010 only in 2035. And guess what? These guys still decide not to go for the shale agenda. They're all sitting aside looking what is going to happen in Poland, what is the UK going to do. I don't think they can sit on the side anymore because they're not competitive. They're losing out. So my crystal ball is saying Europe will get onto the shale gas or the fracking agenda. I wish I can share with you more around this, but the MC showed me my time is out. So I would conclude with the following. The energy, or more specific, oil and gas, is really a very innovative environment. Why do I say that? We've unlocked new reserves with unconventionals. We are changing the trade through LNG. We are pushing the energy efficiency agenda through power and renewables. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time and happy to take some questions.